Last year, wide receiver was kind of disappointing for fantasy purposes. And now with all these quarterback injuries, Chris, are we headed there again?
Let's hope not, but this is why we break down the matchups, player by player and let you know who you need to start and who you need to sit, because it's not always clear cut.
That's right. There's a lot of factors here, so don't worry. We got you covered. We'll help you out. Figure out what to do in week 3. Let's start with the good news. Still some players you can count on at wide receiver. The must starts for week 3 are Jamar Chase, yes, Puka Nacua, CeeDee Lamb, Malik Neighbors, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Justin Jefferson, Nico Collins, and Jackson Smith-Njigba.
Do you want to get advice from Pierre and myself at the tip of your fingertips? Start, sit, waiver wire, trades, and more? Well, you can do all of this and more on our new app, Draft Lane. We have the ability to view your roster, waivers, and more to give you the right feedback to make the perfect choice. Download Draft Lane from the App Store or Google Play, or use these handy QR codes. And first-time users can use code ENDGAME to get 10 free credits and get your questions answered today.
First matchup of the week goes to the Dolphins at the Bills. Historically a one-sided affair. I don't see it changing too much this week. Let's start with that Dolphins receiving room. Hey, signs of life. Tyreek Hill, 100 yards. Jalen Waddle with a touchdown. Are we back?
Oh, I am not looking forward to the streams prior to Thursday this week. We are going to get so many questions about these guys. I don't want to say we're back already because of one decent game against the Patriots. Like you said, the Bills own the Dolphins, and the Bills have been really bad against the run this year, much better against the pass. If you want to flex these guys after last week, I'm okay with it, but I still can't go higher than that.
Well, at least I can go flex based on what we saw. And look, at risk of being just too cynical here as a Dolphin fan, I don't believe that this is going to go well. It's just factual, right? And look, I haven't been making it about Tua. I think it's about Tua here. The Bills own him. I don't feel good. You can flex them because, of course, there is still that big play upside as we saw last week, but I don't feel great about it still. Now, I'll tell you what, look, despite week 2 output, I'm going lower. Tyreek Hill, 69.5 receiving yards. I just don't feel it this week. But maybe you disagree. You want to go higher? Hey, take your pick. On Underdog, you can go either way. I'm going lower for Tyreek Hill's yardage in week 3. You can join me. You can go against me. Take that pick. And by the way, if you haven't tried Underdog yet, you sign up right now, you also get a gimme pick, and you can pair your choice with that free pick. You just have to sign up using code ENDGAME. That also gets you up to $1,000 in bonus funds in your first deposit. Plus, you pay $5 towards anything. You get $50 in bonus funds added to your account. Just make sure you use code ENDGAME when you check out. All right, now on the Bills side, this kind of convoluted wide receiver group is not getting any clearer after week 2. We saw a shift from week 1. What do you make of all these guys? Got Keon Coleman, Khalil Shakir, Josh Palmer, who technically led the team in receiving last week.
Well, I think that was more because it was the Jets and Sauce Gardner was on Coleman and he had the easier matchups here. I like Coleman this week. I do worry that the Bills are just going to run all over the Dolphins and not have to throw it a lot. So I'm going to put him in the flex here, but he's going to be one of my favorite flexes. Shakir, always fine. And this week, I don't think you need to start Josh Palmer because, again, Keon Coleman's not going to be facing a shutdown corner.
Well, like usual, Khalil Shakir, solid flex, not exciting, but he usually leads the way in terms of target share. Keon Coleman, this is what I expected. I feel like week 1's going to be the outlier here. I don't want to start him. I'm sitting Keon Coleman. And then Josh Palmer, again, just so big play dependent. This guy, you take him in best ball, fine. You want to throw him in your DFS lineup, fine. Your fantasy lineup for week 3, no. All right, and just like nobody wanted, here we go with the battle of the backup quarterbacks with the Bengals at the Vikings. I mean, look, nobody wants to see this. Joe Burrow out. Who knows how long? They're saying it might be 3 months. Not weeks, months. Okay, so we got still Jamar Chase as a must start. I don't know if anybody's going to argue with that, but T. Higgins, you've got to be worried.
You got to be worried here because, I mean, Chase, they're going to, like I said, they'll throw screens, quick slants. They'll find ways to get him touches, and he's a guy who can, rack up yards after the catch, but T. Higgins, he needs those like down the field throws, those outside the number throws. So, against a tough defense here, this Vikings defense looks really good. I'm just going to say a flex this week and a risky one at that. So, yeah, unfortunately, it is what it is, but T. Higgins, very risky this week.
Yeah, I feel like the Bengals will still find ways to score points. I just don't know. T. Higgins is going to be the primary recipient of too many targets, but he's still at least a flex option. Yeah, you can start him. You just don't feel great. I mean, why is it always something with the Bengals offense? All right, now on the other side, J.J. McCarthy didn't exactly light it up in week 2, but still, we are now down to Carson Wentz. Is that right? Carson Wentz? But we're still starting Justin Jefferson. Like, come on. We're still starting Justin Jefferson. I don't feel like we need to think about Adam Thielen or Jalen Naylor.
No, I'm not starting these guys. Even if it was McCarthy, I'm not starting these guys. Certainly not starting them with Wentz.
Texans taking on the Jaguars this week. Look, Houston is not exactly off to a great start, but I think you still got to start Nico Collins. Don't feel the same way about BTJ anymore, even if he was your first-round pick. A lot of talk about Brian Thomas Jr. ducking contact. I mean, literally playing scared. What do you make of this?
I really doubt he's playing scared here. I mean, maybe he's had some alligator arms. He did drop that crucial pass at the end, but I think it's a couple of things. I think that might be part of it, but also we've seen Trevor Lawrence just late on throws, missing easy throws here. This is a tough matchup. Look, Derek Stingley Jr. shadowed Devontae Adams in week 1, shadowed Mike Evans in week 2. He's probably going to shadow BTJ here, and he's not like a complete avoid, but this is a tough spot. I'm probably still starting BTJ. You're probably still starting BTJ. I'm going to say he's a solid start this week, but man, this could be another bad game. As far as Travis Hunter goes, I'm sitting this guy till further notice. He played more defensive snaps than offensive snaps last week. This was already a guy who was like very low average depth of target here. Got to sit Travis Hunter until further notice.
Yeah, this is already becoming a headache. We thought the Jags running back situation was going to be the complicated one, not the wide receivers. But, all right, look. BTJ, I don't want to buy into the narrative here. I don't do that. I like to use facts and evidence and all this. I've seen it. Look, I've dove into the film and I have all these people saying these things. It was multiple instances, not just that one near the goal line, where it's true. He's scared to get hit. And they're saying this traces back to the preseason. He took a hard shot. I think he'll get over it, right? He knows, he's heard the noise, he's watching the film, he'll be okay. And look, that target share was still insanely high. He almost had a touchdown, should have had another one. I think you've got to start him, but let's just say he's solid this week. As far as Travis Hunter, I think at least a flex. I feel like last week, wasn't exactly how they're going to go the rest of the season in terms of trying to shift him more on defense. I still think he gets enough targets. He's got some upside. I'll say he's a flex option. Now let's talk Colts and Titans. All right, so none of the receivers here really jump off the page in terms of fantasy, but there could be some sneaky value in this matchup. What do you think as far as the Colts here? Got Michael Pittman, Josh Downs.
I think Michael Pittman will be solid this week. I mean, the Titans have the 4th highest pass rate over expectation through 2 games. They're a bit of a pass funnel. Dare I say, Danny Dimes looks good. Michael Pittman, we said last week, don't start him. It's Pat Surtain. There's no Pat Surtain here on the Titans that I'm even worried about. I think Michael Pittman will be solid this week. Josh Downs, barely a flex, like a risky flex here. He's only run 54% of the routes this year. Very risky flex, but it is a good matchup.
At risk of contradicting myself, look, I said it, you're missing Burrow or Purdy or one of these quarterbacks. Your top option on the waiver wire is Daniel Jones. All right, there we go. Daniel Jones, Colts offense, legit. But that said, I'm not feeling great about the receivers this week. I just feel like this is going to be one of those low-scoring games on the ground. I think these guys are okay. Josh Downs, look, there's no ceiling here. He's not getting enough targets. I can sit him pretty easily. I think Pittman is still a strong flex, higher end of the flex, tier here, but I don't think I want to go too much higher. And then for the Titans, starting to kind of see it come together. We got Calvin Ridley, but also Alec Ayamanor, the rookie here, he's getting almost as many targets as Ridley.
Yeah, that's what's concerning for me as somebody who pumped up Ridley all offseason is wait, why isn't Ridley just clearly the number 1 wide receiver right now? This is a good matchup against the Colts. We don't know. Last week they were missing their top 2 corners. Not sure if they're going to play this week, but this is still a good matchup here. I'm going to say Calvin Ridley's solid this week, but he's going to be the lower end of the solid for me because I need to see him pull away for targets, and I still need to see some improvement from Cam Ward. Iomanor, I know he caught that touchdown, but that had like a 20% probability. I mean, that was just a prayer that was answered. Like that's not never happening again. That was crazy there. He's a flex.
Hey, it's Cam Ward. You might see that play again at some point, but yeah, we don't want to count on that. But look, you got to feel good about Iomanor. It doesn't mean you need to start him, but this guy's going to be kind of a sneaky flex play each week. I'll put him there this week. And I do feel like really should be solid. I know I don't feel great about his ceiling here, but he's at least establishing a floor. And if there's a team that's going to be coming from behind and having to pass more, it's probably the Titans. Next up, the Raiders at the Commanders. All right, so Raiders spreading the ball around a little bit more. Jacoby Myers is still the wide receiver one, though, I think by far.
Yeah, he's still the wide receiver one. He's still the guy I prefer here. This is not a tough matchup against this Commanders defense. Doesn't scare me. I'm going to say solid. And then, look, we're starting to see Trey Tucker get a little more involved here, but I don't know if I'm ready to start Trey Tucker yet. I'm going to say desperation only here.
Yeah, I did mention Trey Tucker in the stash video early this season, but he's still just a stash. And then Jacoby Myers, I mean, this is a guy who's probably, regardless of matchup, going to kind of live in that solid range. Never going to have huge upside, but also you should feel pretty good about the fact that the Raiders are throwing the ball a fair amount. And now it's still kind of early in the week right now, but it's going to be decision time. If Jaden Daniels doesn't play in week 3, what are you going to do with guys like Terry McLaurin and Deebo Samuel, who's scored in each of the first 2 games?
Well, I think if it's not Jaden Daniels, you got to knock him down a peg. But I'll say right now, not knowing it's still early in the week and they're still talking like there's a chance he could play. We'll see. I mean, not feeling good about it, but we'll see. I think in this matchup, it's a good matchup. I'm going to put Terry in the solid tier, again, assuming it's Jaden Daniels because it's the Raiders. They don't scare me. It's his 3rd game now. He should be starting to get more acclimated, more up to game speed. Deebo, I'll still say a flex, but like a high-end flex. But look, this guy can't score every single week. I mean, he only had 48 yards last week. Like, if he scores, yeah, you're going to love it again. But if he doesn't, he'll just be a flex.
Yeah, all right. So with Terry, we shouldn't be surprised, missed some camp time with a contract dispute. And remember last year, starting out the season, first couple of games, didn't really do much. But I still don't feel better about him this week, especially if it's Marcus Mariota at quarterback. I mean, this should be a great matchup against the Raiders defense, but I'm just going to put him as a flex. And same thing with Deebo. He'll get used. I just don't feel like there's a great ceiling here. So both these guys are just flexes. Rams taking on the Eagles in week 3. You're definitely starting Puka, and you got to feel pretty good now about Devontae Adams. Had a big game already. And hey, Matt Stafford is looking pretty good. What about that back issue? So much for that.
So much for that. Like I said, anytime Matthew Stafford's healthy, you should feel good. He's healthy right now, so we should feel good. That being said, I don't feel good about Adams at all this week. Look, I'm batting 1,000 with Devontae Adams right now. Now it's been 2 weeks, but in week 1 I said don't start him, and he wasn't very good. Last week I said you pretty much have to start him, and he was awesome. I'm going to say you can start him this week, but he's like a risky flex for me because he's probably going to see a ton of Quinyon Mitchell this week. I don't want any part of Quinyon Mitchell, honestly. Like, sure, Adams, he's a good player. He could hit on a big play. He could score a touchdown, but this is risky. He's a risky flex.
I hear what you're saying. I know there's some risk here. Not a great matchup, but 2 things keep Adams at least in the solid range for me. Is number 1, I don't know if this is going to be a strict shadow situation. It may be, it may not be, but also Mitchell is not quite Pat Surtain. Adams is such a good receiver, veteran here. I don't think he gets completely wiped out just because of that. And also, against the Eagles, man, there's going to be volume. The Rams are going to have to pass quite a bit to keep up here. So I still like Adams enough. I'm going to start him over a lot of these other flex options. Now, here come the Eagles receivers. It's 2 weeks in a row. AJB is not helping you in fantasy, straight up. Where do you put him?
Well, this week I have him solid. I'm going to say the high end of the solid. This is a good matchup for him against the Rams. Rams, second highest cover 1. Last year he had 4.60 yards per route run versus cover 1. Devonta Smith only 2.29. Now, I will say that the worry here is going to be the same every week. Like, I'm not sure the Rams offense is good enough to force the Eagles into way more passing volume than they need to. Like, I still think the Eagles are going to be able to run the football if they want. not throw it more than 25 times. But it's A.J. Brown. He's a good player. This is a good matchup for him. I'm going to say solid. One of my favorite solid starts this week, actually. Devonta Smith, just a flex for me. This is not a good spot for Devonta Smith, even though these corners aren't very good. And I do worry about the volume.
I'm with you on Devonta Smith. Still just a flex at this point. Always going to be somewhat volatile. As far as AJB, I'm going to take the second half of your argument and say, I don't know if the volume is going to be enough here. But look, he got targeted plenty in week 2 and still didn't wind up doing anything. I wonder if he's not really 100%. At this point, I view him as kind of a risky upside boom bust type of flex also. And now we have an NFC South battle between the Falcons and the Panthers. All right, so Atlanta didn't exactly light up the scoreboard last week, but they also didn't really need to. Do we see better output from guys like Drake London, Darnell Mooney, who are both at least healthy?
I think so. I mean, they didn't even have to throw the ball last week. The Vikings put up no fight on offense. It's like we can just kick field goals and win this game easy, and that's pretty much what they did. I still think Drake London is a strong start. I mean, we can't just look at last week and be like, oh no, and panic here. Like, look at what this guy has done with Michael Penix Jr. in every other game. I mean, I know week 1 wasn't a big game, but 15 targets, almost scored a touchdown in that game. He'll be fine. He's a strong start. And I'll say Darnell Mooney should be worth a flex this week. He's got a game under his belt now. He's healthier. They're going to have to throw it more than they did last week, so he's a flex.
I don't know how much more they're going to have to throw it because, man, the Panthers have looked so bad. And look, all of the points and yardage they've been putting up is basically been in garbage time. And so I can't go much higher than solid for Drake London. I still love him long-term, season long. I think he's going to be a stud. But also, Carolina does have a pretty good corner on the other side, J.C. Horn. So I think London will be fine. I mean, you can set it and forget, and he'll be okay. But I just don't feel a big game here. And then Mooney, yeah, he's always a flex option. Now, on the other hand, got the Panthers, as I mentioned, did wind up doing something in the passing game because they were down big in the fourth quarter. But Ted McMillan, I mean, he showed something. How confident do you feel like he's taking those strides to be a fantasy stud?
He's on that path. I mean, a big game is coming. It just feels like a big game is coming, and I don't want to miss out on it. I'm going to say solid this week, but high-end solid. Like, I want him in my lineup. Plus, A.J. Terrell left that game with a hamstring injury. I mean, very unlikely he plays in this one, so that helps. And then I'll say Hunter Renfrow looks like the next man up here. If you want to flex him in PPR leagues, you can. Don't expect another game like last week, though. And then Xavier Legette, what is going on with this guy? This guy looks terrible. No chance.
Yeah, how do you somehow get targeted, 8 times and wind up with negative yards? It's actually amazing. I think we can drop Xavier Legette for now. But add Hunter Renfrow. I talked about him on the waiver wire. This is a thing. Bryce Young loves slot receivers. He almost doesn't care who it is. He's going to throw it to him. So, look, Renfrow is just a flex option, but still, he's a decent one. Look, I'm going to go all in on Ted. He has shown enough. Some highlight reel plays already 2 weeks in a row. He's getting those deep targets, those quality targets. They're going to have to continue to pass just to keep pace here. So I'm putting McMillan as a strong start. I think he's there. Even though Atlanta has not given up a ton through the air in the first 2 games, that defense is coming together. They still gave up a pretty good game to Egbuka in week 1 and at least over 80 yards to JJ in week 2. I think McMillan is a pretty high floor with potential for a high ceiling option this week. All right, now let's talk Steelers at Patriots. Predictably, that Pittsburgh pass offense took a step back in week 2. What do they do in week 3? We've got DK Metcalf as the 1 and Calvin Austin still as the 2.
Yeah, I'm not starting Calvin Austin. I mean, come on. We're on week 3. You shouldn't need to go there. I'll say this about DK Metcalf. I'm going to put him in the solid tier. I'm going to say risky solid right now, but this comes down to, are we going to see Christian Gonzalez or not? We haven't seen this guy the first 2 games of the season. I think if he's out, that certainly helps DK Metcalf here, and maybe I'll bump him up into like normal solid range, but if he plays, that's going to make him a little bit risky solid because, yeah, I don't think we're going to see week 1 Aaron Rodgers again this season.
Yeah, exactly. He keys it all up. There we go. He got his revenge against the Jets. There you go. But look, DK Metcalf is still always going to be a solid option. He does have that big playability. He's clearly the one there. Not that Arthur Smith cares, but yeah, he's solid here. It's not a terrible matchup. I think Calvin Austin is still at least a flex option because he will get those chunk plays. And, for what it's worth, there still isn't a whole lot of target competition. Then that Patriots pass offense, it looked really promising week 1. Did almost nothing in week 2. It's like they were only throwing to the running backs. Like, what happened here? What do we do now with guys like Diggs and Kayshon Boutte?
I'm just putting him in the flex tier. I mean, Boutte still ran the most routes, but I mean, luckily he had that one catch for a touchdown, but that was it. Like, you just don't know what you're going to get here. Like, yeah, they're fine. They're flexes, but that's about it.
You would think, actually, because of the matchup, you kind of have to fade him. This Steelers defense just looks terrible. Like, what gives here? They're giving up a ton of passing yards, but at the same time, how confident can you be that Pats receivers, any individual receiver, is going to go off? They're flexes with upside, and that's it. Now let's talk Packers at Browns. All right, so Jaden Reed is out for several weeks. What does that mean for, let's see, Romeo Doubs, Matthew Golden, Dontavian Wicks, and that's probably as far as we should go.
Yeah, I don't think we need to go deeper than that here. At least we got some clarity. Like, okay, it's probably these 3 guys. And, of course, Tucker Kraft, who you're probably starting Tucker Kraft. But I'm just going to label all these guys as flexes. I'm not scared of this Browns defense necessarily. And they've been very good against the run, the Browns have. So I think the Packers might have to throw it more. But I'll say, if there's one guy I want here, it's Matthew Golden. I know he's done nothing this year, but he should have had a monster game last week. He ran the second most routes after Jaden Reed went out. He was open all over the field. It's going to happen for Matthew Golden. I don't want to miss out on it. I'm not starting him over better guys, of course, but for some of these other flex guys we've talked about, I'd probably prefer Golden.
Yeah, that's fair. Great time to stash Golden if he's somehow on the waiver wire or buy low. As far as starting this week, my concern, we know the Packers now have, let's just say, an elite defense. And they've got Josh Jacobs. They want to run the ball. There's just probably not enough upside for any one of these receivers. Dobbs is a flex who's mostly touchdown dependent. Golden is a flex who's mostly touchdown dependent. Wicks is still not enough target share for me. You can sit him. All right, now in the Cleveland side, feels like it's still Joe Flacco at quarterback, although who knows. On the one hand, Cleveland not doing a whole lot on offense. On the other hand, they're still very pass heavy. They lead the NFL in dropbacks.
They lead the NFL in dropbacks, but they're like empty dropbacks. Like, what are they? Like, okay, Cedric Tillman scored again, but come on. Did you see that touchdown? It like deflected up in the air and just happened to land in his lap. I mean, come on. Like, super lucky there. These guys are just risky flexes against one of the best defenses here. Like, you can start them if you want, but I don't want to.
I don't and I won't. Look, it looks like Flacco's used up everything he's got. And even if they switch to like Dylan Gabriel, does that really make me feel better? It doesn't. A lot of times we'll sit or fade these receivers because of the opposing secondary. To me, it's the pass rush. Like, I think the Packers are just going to clamp down here. Yeah, I'm that worried. I'm going to look elsewhere. Judy and Timlin this week for me are both sits. All right, now let's talk Jets at Bucs. So this is going to be a little bit painful. All right, Gary Wilson did not exactly go nuclear in week 2 because, well, sort of, I guess, if you think about the fact that the whole Jets offense imploded, and then now they might have Tyrod Taylor at quarterback if Justin Fields doesn't clear concussion protocol. How do you feel about Garrett Wilson?
I still feel good. I like Tyrod Taylor. I think he'll be fine for him. I mean, he can't be worse than Justin Fields was last week. This guy had 27 yards last week. Like, that's hard to do. Like, you got to be trying really hard to be bad to be that bad. But I still think Garrett Wilson will be fine either way here. Bucs defense, the pass defense doesn't scare me off him. I still think he's solid.
Well, for what it's worth, the Bucs aren't quite the Bills, and yes, Taylor is a veteran quarterback, and Wilson's still getting massive target share because they got nobody else to throw to. I think he's at least still solid, maybe not quite strong this week. And on the other side, Mike Evans, Emeka Egbuka, is this guy really just the new number 1 receiver in Tampa?
I mean, look, he scored on Monday night, but he didn't have a bigger game than Mike Evans yardage-wise. Mike Evans still had more yards than him. I still think Mike Evans is the wide receiver 1 here, but he's drawn like the worst possible start to the season so far. Like A.J. Terrell week 1, Derek Stingley week 2. Now he's got to go against Sauce Gardner. Like, can we get this guy an easy matchup, please? I mean, I think you're still starting Mike Evans because he's Mike Evans, but I think he's like going to be lower end of solid for me. And I think it might be another week where Egbuka has more fantasy points because he's not going to have to see a lot of Sauce. So I'm going to say he's solid as well, but I might actually prefer Egbuka this week.
I'm there with you. I think both these receivers slot in as solid. This Tampa offense has been good enough, but not what we saw late last year. I think those offensive line injuries are affecting them. Not a great matchup on paper. I mean, certainly worth starting in most leagues, but maybe not going to go off. Next up, we got the Broncos at the Chargers. All right, so Sean Payton doing what he does and trying to confound us. It wasn't Cortland Sutton going off last week. It was Troy Franklin, naturally. So do you feel like this means something or no?
No, I don't feel like this means anything. I mean, it had a weird game last week. Like, Bo Nix lit up the Colts and Cortland Sutton had nothing to do with it. Kind of weird, but I'm not worried about Sutton here. This certainly is not as easy of a matchup as they had last week. And you look at it last year, he had 15 and 10 fantasy points against the Chargers, did have 1 touchdown. This may not be his best game of the season, but I still think Sutton is solid. Franklin, look, you want to chase last week, you want to chase that this week in your lineup. It's risky, you can flex him, but I think we learned our lesson with the Booties, with the Hollywood Browns. Like, these guys that, pop off for 1 week, don't always do it again the next week.
No, absolutely. I mean, look, Troy Franklin, it was pretty obvious they went out of their way to design targets for him, especially in that one drive. They just kept going to him. I think 7 of his targets were just in the first half, and then they kind of went away from that. Oh, look, Troy Franklin is now in the flex conversation. I think that's fair. We heard a lot of hype about him in the preseason. I think they're going to continue to use him. Just don't count on it. And then I'm going to bump Sutton down to the flex because this matchup is okay, not great, but also they're spreading the ball around to an annoying degree. Last week, it wasn't just Franklin. 10 different Broncos caught a pass and were targeted. It's not what you want to see. It doesn't quite produce an alpha receiver in that offense. So Sutton always has upside, but this week, I think he's just a flex. And then now maybe even more unpredictable and, let's face it, frustrating wide receiver group. It's deep, it's good, not great for fantasy. Look, we got Ladd McConkey, Keenan Allen, and Quentin Johnson. These guys are all fantasy relevant, but I don't know if that's actually a good thing. We thought it was going to be mostly Ladd leading the way. He's actually 3rd on this team in fantasy points after 2 games.
I mean, it's good if you have Keenan Allen and QJ so far because they're the only ones scoring touchdowns, and for some reason, Ladd can't score a touchdown here. But yeah, this is bad, and now it's the Broncos. I will say, I don't think Ladd and Keenan are going to see a ton of Surtain this week because they do play a lot out of the slot. I think QJ is going to see more Surtain, but I mean, that being said, I can't feel great about Ladd McConkey after what we saw on Monday night here. I still got to put him solid, though. I can't be completely out on Ladd here, but maybe lower end solid. I think Keenan is also solid here, and look, if QJ is going to keep hitting big plays and scoring touchdowns, even in a tough matchup, he's got to be at least worth a flex, right?
Yeah, I think so. I was ready to say, nah, I'm out on QJ because he's probably going to see Surtain. Like you said, this is definitely a tougher matchup. I mean, let's be fair. It was the Raiders last week, but still, like you said, he's getting a lot of end zone looks, deep shots. Definitely worth a flex. As far as Ladd and Keenan, I do feel like we have to step back a little bit and say it's still only been 2 games. Ladd McConkey will finally get his at some point. Is it going to be this week? Maybe not, but he's still a solid option because he's in a good passing offense, and so is Keenan. Now we got the Saints at the Seahawks. Jackson Smith and Jigba has slid into the must-start category. Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, not quite yet.
Not quite yet. I don't know if they're ever going to quite be there. But I will say this, the Saints, they play the fastest speed of any team. They have run the 7th most plays per game in the NFL through 2 weeks, and they've thrown 80 pass attempts over 2 games. Like, the volume is at least there. I will say this is not a great matchup on the road against Seattle, but Chris Olave at least could be flexed, and I think he's like a strong flex because the volume is there. Shaheed, more of a risky flex, probably needs to score a touchdown.
Yeah, that's exactly right. These guys are both flex options. I do feel better about Olave. 27% target shares is pretty healthy. I almost want to put him as a solid option, but on the road in Seattle, not ideal. But at least we can say Kellen Moore has been good overall for the health of this offense, plus the fact these receivers are actually healthy. Now in Seattle, all right, Jason dominating there, but all of a sudden, yeah, Cooper Kupp, he is alive. Do you buy into week 1 where he did absolutely nothing, or week 2 where he all of a sudden got a healthy amount of targets?
Maybe somewhere in between here, but look, it's a good matchup against the Saints. So if you want to flex Cooper Kupp, I'm okay with it. I mean, I don't expect a huge game, but he should be fine.
I still don't want to flex him, but I can't say he's not worth a flex if that's your best choice. So I'll put him barely as a flex here. And then, a guy like Torrey Horton, sure, scored a touchdown. Let's not count on that again. Cowboys at Bears. This feels like it's going to be a shootout. We'll see. All right. You got CeeDee Lamb. You start him. You got George Pickens. What do you do?
I think you got to start him this week. I mean, not a strong start or a must start, but the Bears have looked terrible against the pass this year. Jalen Johnson now talking about going to be out indefinitely with that groin injury. No one's going to be shadowing George Pickens here. We saw last week what he can do in this offense when he's not facing one of the best corners. I think he's got to be a solid start. One of my favorite solid starts this week.
Yeah, and for that reason, I'm going to go ahead and say he should be a strong start. I can't think of too many other receivers here who aren't obvious ones that have more upside. And I know it's hard to take a number 2 receiver in his own offense and say, almost have to start this guy. Against the Bears, I mean, come on. Jalen Johnson out. Let's go. George Pickens week, it's here. Now for the Bears, it looks like Rome Odunze's season is here. I mean, is he already the guy? But then what does that mean for DJ Moore?
I mean, he looks like the guy so far. I mean, it's only been 2 weeks. You don't want to go crazy here, but man, he looks good so far. It looks like the second-year breakout is here. And the Cowboys, yeah, I'm not scared at all. He's got to be a strong... Like, how do you not put Rome Odunze in your lineup this week? He's got to be a strong start. But I'll say DJ Moore should be solid this week. I've been a little, nervous about DJ Moore the first 2 weeks, not wanting to commit to, telling people to start him. But this week, I feel good enough. If nothing else, they're going to have to throw the ball a lot, and I'm not scared of this Cowboys defense.
I'm not scared of the defense. Well, let me say, okay, this is why I was all over Rome Odunze in the draft season. You got to start him, basically. He has a 46.4% air yard share on his team. That's 6th in the NFL. This guy is going to continue to thrive. Yeah, strong start Odunze, but for the same reason, I'm getting more skeptical on DJ Moore. We've seen him take a back seat here. He's only got a 16% target share. Caleb Williams is not looking his way as often as he needs to for him to really be a fantasy stud. I'm not even sure if it's going to happen. So despite the good matchup, I think DJ Moore is still just a flex. Cardinals at 49ers. All right, Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to do that thing, isn't he, right? Where you can trust him and maybe not. And what is he going to do this week?
I still like Harrison Jr. I'll say this. Number one, they didn't have to throw it much last week against the Panthers. Number two, it looked like they were kind of out of sync. I'm talking about Harrison and Kyler Murray. And number three, J.C. Horn for the Panthers. We say he's a pretty good corner, but I still believe in Marvin Harrison. There's nobody on the 49ers like J.C. Horn as far as in that secondary that I think is going to just, take Harrison somewhat out of the game. And they're going to have to throw the ball much more because the 49ers can put up points even with Mac Jones. So I think he's still solid this week.
Yeah, he has to at least be solid. Maybe not the best matchup, but exactly. They're going to have to pass the ball a lot. Still not a whole lot of target competition. And sure, Michael Wilson scored. We're not buying into that. It's just one of those things that's going to happen. So don't need to consider Wilson, but Harrison is still solid. And then for the Niners, well, Juwan Jennings, he played, and he led the team in receiving, just like we all thought. Ricky Pearsall still did something, but now we have to decide who's the Niner receiver that you want.
Well, look, it's got to be Juwan Jennings. I mean, the guy barely practiced on Friday, had no time with Mac Jones, and it didn't matter. Went out there, got 10 targets, and led the team in receiving. It's got to be Juwan Jennings. We saw last year Mac Jones with the Jaguars. He's not afraid to chuck it, right? I think maybe after his time in New England, he's like, screw this. If I get my chance, I'm taking shots. We saw that with BTJ. I think Jennings is the guy I want here. I think he's a solid start this week. I'll say Pearsall's still a flex, probably one of my stronger flex, but man, I mean, I had Pearsall as a boom because I was like, Mac Jones will be fine and there's not going to be any Juwan Jennings. Well, I was half right because Mac Jones is fine. I didn't expect Juwan Jennings to do this.
Definitely did not expect that. I will say, look, Jennings obviously had the bigger game, but I hate saying the whole if he didn't get that one long play. Okay, so he had that long touchdown, but besides that, he only caught 5 of his 10 targets. Maybe they're not quite in sync. He did make that big play. Pearsall caught 4 of his 6 targets. He's still getting used enough. I feel it's still going to be pretty even as far as the distribution. And Jennings has a slightly tougher individual matchup, based on the opposing corners. I think they're both solid this week. All right, now Chiefs at Giants. Malik Neighbors, I think pretty much solidified he's a must start. Not that he ever wasn't. What about the Chiefs? So Xavier Worthy, maybe he plays, maybe he doesn't. Hollywood Brown, maybe he catches 10 passes, maybe he doesn't. Let's start, I guess, with Worthy. What if he does play? You're just firing him up.
I don't think you can just fire him up. You have to be a little nervous here, right? Like coming off that shoulder injury, there's always a chance of a re-injury. But that being said, Hollywood Brown isn't the answer here. Travis Kelce isn't the answer here. Okay, Tyquan Thornton did have that big play. Should have had 2 of them, to be honest, in that game. And he can always do that, but he's not the answer either. Right? They need Xavier Worthy right now. But this is still very risky here coming off an injury. But I think if he plays, for the most part, I'm going to say he's solid, but lower end solid because of the risk. Hollywood Brown, man, what a disappointment last week. I mean, what happened to the previous week where he got all the targets? Like, his ADOT is so low that he needs 10 plus targets. If he's not going to get that, I mean, barely even a flex.
Yeah, Hollywood, massive disappointment. He's still a flex option because he's still in that Chiefs offense, although I don't even know if we can use that as a good reason anymore, because he was in that offense as the primary receiver last week. I know, yeah, the Eagles defense is good, but still, there's some people who are wondering, maybe the ankle from the preseason is still not 100%, but it didn't bother him in week 1. I don't know. My concern here is the fact that Pat Mahomes maybe is just not the same quarterback, honestly. And this is why I can't put Worthy, even if he plays. And they say he's good to go. I'm not putting him as higher than a flex. I'm starting to worry about this whole offense, to be honest. Pat Mahomes, since Tyreek Hill left, those deep touchdowns, sure, you saw that shot to Thornton last week. Did you also see the one that he sailed and missed and the repeated misses in those deep throws? He only averages 2.3 deep touchdowns per season ever since Tyreek Hill left. It's just not the same offense. And so with the re-injury risk for Xavier Worthy and then Hollywood just kind of being a dud, these guys are just flexes until further notice. While Hollywood was doing nothing in people's starting lineups, Wan'Dale Robinson was going ballistic, basically on the waiver wire or your bench. So I don't think we're going to see that again, but you got to at least consider Wan'Dale Robinson, right?
Yes, begrudgingly, I have to consider Wan'Dale Robinson again. No, we're not going to see that. Obviously not going to see over 400 passing yards, but they may need to throw it a bunch again this week because, the Chiefs offense hasn't been as good, but I'm talking about the Giants here. So, look, he's getting the targets. He could score. Russ at least didn't look awful last week. I'll say solid, but low end solid.
I feel like this is the game where we look back at the end of the season and say, hey, remember when the Giants did that in week 2 and scored a bunch of points? That was funny. It's not happening against the Chiefs. This Chiefs defense is legit, but Wan'Dale Robinson, just based on target volume, is a flex option. Yeah, we're going to see nothing close to what we saw last week. Then a game that could be an absolute shootout. Let's hope. Lions at the Ravens. All right, so Sun God, did you even question starting him? I hope you didn't. He's an absolute must start every week. Now, Jameson Williams, we didn't really love him last week. He did get that long touchdown, but really didn't have a big game. Does he have one against this Ravens secondary?
I don't know. I got to be honest. I'm getting a little nervous about Jameson Williams. Look, last week I said Amon-Ra does way better against zone, and he did do way better against zone. But Jameson, the whole Lions offense outside of Sam Laporta did great last week. So, okay. Jameson did better than I thought last week. And the Ravens do play the 7th most man, which I think helps Jameson. But what I'm really concerned about is he only had 4 targets last week. He's only got a 13% target share this year. Yeah, he hit that big play last week. But if he doesn't hit that big play, you're getting almost nothing from this guy right now. But that being said, he's in the Lions offense. The Ravens do play a lot of man. I'm only going to say a flex. I'll say one of my stronger flexes, but man, that target share, I can't put him higher than a flex.
I'm going to put him a little higher than a flex. I think he's at least a solid choice. We know J-Mo always has that big play potential, right? That's just always. But think about potential game script here. At Baltimore, they're going to have to throw the ball quite a bit. And, for what it's worth, this Baltimore defense has been giving up a decent amount of yardage to receivers. Maybe not huge monster games yet, but they've only played 2 games and already 4 different receivers have gone over 50 yards, and they gave up 112 to Keon Coleman. I feel good enough about Jameson Williams. I think he's solid. Now, on the other hand, kind of aggravating. We're seeing a lot of Baltimore Ravens getting in the end zone, but still, I don't think we need to talk about guys like Devontae Walker, but maybe DeAndre Hopkins. Is he now becoming relevant again along with Zay Flowers?
I mean, he could be. Look, he could score, right? If you're desperate, which you shouldn't be in week 3, but if you're in like a really deep league and you're desperate, he could score. He's a very, very risky flex. As for Zay Flowers, I mean, very solid start, borderline strong start. This guy has 20 targets and 14 catches through 2 games. Like, even last week, without finding the end zone, he gave you a very high floor. He looks great so far, and we got to think this is going to be a high-scoring game with a lot of points, a lot of throwing. So, very solid start.
Yeah, Zay Flowers, definitely solid, getting actually a pretty good target share despite the fact so many other players are getting involved, but he's still the guy there. Definitely solid in this matchup. As far as D-Hop, I mean, he's really just touchdown dependent. If he doesn't score, we're not talking about him. Yeah, he's got 2 touchdowns so far, but he only has 2 catches in each of those games. So it's touchdown or bust. It's only week 3. You shouldn't need him yet. All right, those are all the wide receivers that should matter for fantasy. Act accordingly. Also, don't forget we got running back, quarterback, tight end, everything you need to know to win in week 3. It's right here.